Hello my Renew fam, and welcome back to my channel where I empower you to change the way you view yourself, your circumstances, and your life. As the title of this video indicates, I'll be sharing with you my depression story and how I was able to overcome depression in 4 actionable steps. So disclaimer, I am going to record this video straight through with very little editing, but I will not release the video in one big chunk. So instead of releasing one long 20 or 30-minute video, I am going to release the video into smaller sections. That way you don't have to sit and listen to me for a whole 20 minutes. And also that allows me time to go through each step of the process thoroughly yet briefly, but enough information for you to understand and get the concept of what I did to overcome depression. But before I get into the steps of how I overcame depression, I must first give you a little bit of the backstory of how depression was present in my life. So many people around the world struggle with depression at some point in time in their lives, but everyone does not experience it the same way. And it does not present in everybody's situation, in their life, in their body in the same way. So for me, my depression started as early as, I would say, 4 or 5 years old. That's probably my earliest memory of being depressed. Probably 5 is my earliest memory of having depression. But at that age, I did not know that I had depression, and I did not yet know that there was a name for the emotions that I was experiencing. So for me, depression presented itself in a few key ways. One way that depression presented itself was more so detachment. I could be enjoying my time with family, friends, at an event, laughing, and then all of a sudden I would get this wave of detachment or this feeling of numbness. I wasn't happy, wasn't sad, I just felt empty. I felt nothing. I would feel detached from what was happening around me. That's one way depression presented itself. The second way that depression presented itself was in what's more commonly known as crying spells or crying episodes, where you become emotional without really any cause known to you, but you begin to feel sad. This wave of sadness comes over you and you cry. But for me, when I did experience these crying episodes, I would isolate myself. I would go in my room, go into the bathroom, walk away, cry right quick, get it out, and come back as though nothing happened. And that's another way that depression presented itself. The third way that I noticed depression symptoms looking back on it was definitely negative self-talk. A lot of negative self-talk, negative beliefs about myself, via low self-esteem, low value, not thinking that you're enough, good enough, pretty enough, anything enough, in those moments, not feeling enough. And then the other major way I would say that depression presented itself was with thoughts of, not of self-harm, but thoughts of not wanting to be living any further, not wanting to experience life anymore. That was another way that depression presented itself for me. Now, I can't share my depression story without talking about my faith base. I grew up in a holiness household. My dad was a pastor. My mom had an evangelism background. She was saved from a teenager. She was an evangelist early in life. So I grew up in a very spiritual household. And so from a young age, I knew that I needed God. I believed the Bible, I believed the God of the Bible, and I knew how much I needed Him to help navigate life. So having that faith base is what allowed me to not deal with thoughts of actual suicide or of ending my life, because I understood that my life was not mine to take. And because I knew that my life was not mine to take, I never even thought of trying to take my life, because I know that there was no guarantee if I did try to take my life that it would be successful. And I have heard of stories where people have attempted to end their lives and they now had missing limbs or internal organ damage because they tried to take something into their own hands that was not meant to be in their hands to begin with. So having that faith base is what kept me from actually even having the thought of acting on it. But because I knew that, I will still have thoughts of not wanting to be alive, but I will often pray to God like, hey, I don't want to be here in the morning. Can you just not allow me to wake up in the morning? But every morning, there I was, still alive, still breathing. And so I knew that I had to still get up and go about my day. But along with that, I must also mention that because I was so young when depression first started, again, I was at least as young as 5 years old. Throughout that period of time from 5 to 15, I wrestled with trying to understand depression and also how it did not match, you know, with my faith base. Because like I said, I believe God to be the God of the Bible. He's omniscient, he's all powerful. He is the creator of the universe, but yet I am praying to him to move this depression. And really at that age, my prayer was, God, I just want to be happy. Lord, make me happy. I don't want to be sad all the time. I don't want to cry all the time. Make me happy. And he hadn't done it yet. So I felt like, you know, I believe it was Paul who had the thorn in the flesh, and he besought God 3 times to move it, and God did not move it. So in my mind, I had convinced myself that what I was dealing with, the crying spells, the change of emotion, I had convinced myself that it was normal. Even when I went to school and I saw other kids, I'm like, they look happy. I don't think they're crying and they're not doing it. Well, everybody's different, so this must be my normal. And that was a lie that I believed. And even on a greater scale, it was a trick of the enemy to keep me confined in the situation that I was in. Because in my childlike mind, I was trying to rationalize and intellectualize what I was dealing with. And I had convinced myself that what I was dealing with was my normal. And even on a greater scale than that, the devil had me convinced that this was God's will for my life. For me to live my life depressed, be miserable, and then leave the earth. You know, and that was my understanding of that. That was my understanding, and the devil had me convinced that that was God's plan for my life, because if God didn't want me to have depression, he would remove it, right? And because he hadn't removed it, then this must be what his will is for me. And he fed me that lie, and I ate it. The same way he did Eve in the garden. He took God's perfect will for her life. He took God's perfect instruction, distorted it, gave it to her, and it caused her to eat a lie that was never from the beginning, and it was never the truth. He did the same thing to me. He fed me a lie, and I ate it. And I swallowed it, and I carried it with me for a long, long time. But even though a part of me rationalized it and used it as a defense, like, hey, this is normal. This is what God has for me. He hasn't moved it yet. All of that was the defense mechanism, a way to kind of protect my emotions. Now I know that. I didn't know that at the time, but I believed it at the time. This was God's will for me. But also in the back of my mind, I still knew that it wasn't normal, because I never stopped praying for God to make me happy, in the sense that I was saying to God, make me happy. So fast forward, I'm now 15. So from 5 to 15, I'm dealing with these, again, emotions, these negative thoughts. Some days not feeling pretty, some days not feeling confident, feeling, you know, having low self-worth, and trying to figure out where does all this fit. And also I was very sensitive as a child. I could walk into a room and I could feel everybody's stuff. If this person was happy, I could feel it. If this person was sad, I could feel it. If this person had just, you know, had their feelings hurt, I could feel it. So I was very much sensitive to the world around me. So not only was I carrying my own emotions, I was carrying the emotions of other people as well. But at that age, I didn't quite yet know how to separate other people's emotions from my own. So I'm dealing with this, you know, again, from 5 to 15, trying to navigate it, still having the crying spells. Some days, again, not wanting to wake up, praying to God not to wake up. And fast forward, I'm now 15. I go to the doctor. I'm going to the doctor for a regular checkup. And they found some things going on. And the doctor was kind of talking to me about it. And because I was very sensitive as a child, again, I was very shy. Didn't talk a whole lot. I would be around a lot of people, but not really in the crowd, but just around the crowd to kind of camouflage myself. Because it's easier to hide in a group than it is alone. So having that sensitivity, I didn't like people to look me in my eyes. I would cry. Like it makes you feel vulnerable when people look directly in your eyes, like they could see in your soul. I didn't like that as a kid. So either way, I'm at a doctor's office. My mom is with me. The doctor is telling me, okay, well, yeah, we found this. And he's looking me intently in my eyes and, you know, talking to me about it. Next thing I know, I am crying in the doctor's office. I don't really know why I'm crying, because when I had these crying spells or these crying episodes, I never knew why I would cry. It was just like a wave of sadness would come and I would just start crying. There was never a true trigger that I could say, hey, this caused me to cry. I just felt sad. And then the more people would ask me, why am I crying? It would frustrate me because I really did not know why I was crying. And so the doctor was like, okay, well, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. And of course, the more he asks me what's wrong, the more I'm crying. And he's like, well, did I say something? Did I say something that you didn't like? And I'm like, no. You know, but I'm still crying. And he's like, well, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. So he says, well, do you want your mom to leave the room? I'm like, no, I want her to stay in here. And he's like, and he's looking at her and she's like, my mom was like, I don't know, she gets like that sometimes. Because my mom knew I would have crying spells, but I guess she really didn't, I guess, equate it to depression either. Because again, it was a normal thing. And she was like, well, I don't know, sometimes she gets really sad. She's very sensitive. And he's like, well, let me go and get this test or this questionnaire and I'll come back. So he brings the questionnaire. He has me fill out the questionnaire. I think him and my mom stepped out there this time. I did the questionnaire. He came back in, or they came back in. And so really what he gave me was a depression scale. So lo and behold, what I thought was normal, what I thought I was managing, what I had convinced myself was normal part of my life, I now find out is called depression. It has a name. So for me, you've already told me I have some health things going on. Now on top of this, you're telling me I have depression, which it sounds like a huge thing, right? I have depression. And so now you're telling me you want to put me on 3 different pills, one for the health issue, one for the depression, but depression pills are going to send my blood pressure up. So that's a 3rd pill. And I'm supposed to take all these pills to manage. So, but in the moment, I'm listening to him, but I'm not listening to him because I'm kind of having identity crisis because the devil had me convinced that this was a normal thing. But now I'm finding out it's not normal. It has a name. And now I'm supposed to take these pills to cure my depression. So now I'm kind of going through this grief cycle because who I thought I was isn't who I am. It's a shell of who I thought I was. And I had convinced myself of a lie that something was normal that it wasn't. And most time when people think about grief, they think about the loss of a person or the loss of a thing. But I was going through the stages of grief like denial. Wait a minute, what? Me? Depression? Nah, I'm handling this. No, I was not. Bargaining, you know, anger. Because I didn't understand, like, well, what is this? Like, why is this happening to me? I'm already sad every day. Now I figure out there's a name for it. And it was like this big emotional thing because I'm already emotional anyway. So it was like this big emotional thing in my mind. It's like I was trying to wrap my brain around it. So go home. I think maybe like the first day or so, I think I took my depression pills the first day and the pills for my health. So that was going on in my body. And I took the pills like the first couple of days. And probably a week went by and I was talking to God about like, I don't understand this, you know, I'm trying to process this, like, man. And I was more so upset with myself that I allowed the enemy to trick me to make me think that my state of misery was normal. And I was like, wow, I was bamboozled. That's probably how Eve felt after they got kicked out of the garden. But I was like, I'm bamboozled. What is this? So I'm praying and, you know, talking to God. And so I had a talk with God. I said, and this is again where my faith base came in. And everyone may not agree with this, but this is my story. But there's also a disclaimer. What I did next, I'm not telling anyone else to do. This is what I did for me. So after talking with God, I said, well, Lord, I said, I have these pills I'm supposed to be taking for my depression because they're supposed to make me happier. They're supposed to balance out my hormones so I'm not as sad anymore. And I said, if I have to depend on a pill to give me joy or happiness or to balance out my hormones, then why am I serving you? If I have to depend on a pill to give me joy, when you said that you would make me joyful in your house of prayer, when you said you wish that for our joy to be filled, when you said your strength is made perfect in my weakness, when you said you know my end from my beginning, and you know me, and your plans for me are good to give me hope in the future, why do I depend on a pill to do something as small as give me happiness when you create the whole universe? Everything is in your hands. I'm in your hands. But what I didn't agree with was that if I am taking a pill to make me happy, once this pill bottle is empty, my happiness is also empty. And I just could not accept that from an all-powerful God, that you can't do something as simple as make me happy. So I said, I talked to God. I said, I can't. I said, God, I said, if you don't do it, it won't be done, because I can't become slave to a bottle. Because every time my pills run out, my happiness runs out. I mean, that means I'm back at square one in the same boat that I'm in right now. So what good is a pill bottle if I had to continue to go back and get a refill to get a refill of my happiness? And so I chose not to continue taking the pills. I think I took them probably a day or two, but it didn't sit well with me or my spirit. And again, I'm 15 at this time, and I talked to my mom about it, and I told her that I didn't want to take them. And my mom said, well, if you're believing for God to heal you or deliver you from that, then I'm believing with you, and I'm not going to make you take them. And I'm so grateful that my mom did not discourage my faith. I'm so glad that she did not, use her authority and say, well, nope, you're going to take it. Because some parents would have. But God had a greater plan for me. And my mom, she's always respected my relationship with God, because she knows that I hear God pretty well. And she's always trusted his guidance of me, his guidance in my life, and me hearing him to help guide my life. And I know some people, but again, this is a disclaimer. I'm not telling anyone else not to take your medication. I am not a doctor. I don't prescribe medication. I am a licensed therapist, but I understand the importance of medication and how it impacts the body now, and that people do need their medications. I understood that then as well, but for me, it just didn't sit well with me at that time. So again, this is not a public service announcement to say don't take your meds. So again, disclaimer, I am not telling anyone not to take their medication, because you listen to your doctor. I'm not your doctor, but that's the route I chose to take for me. But in going to my physician and knowing that what I was dealing with this whole time had a name, it allowed me to be aware that depression was there. I had to admit that depression was there. And then I had to accept that depression was there. And that is the first step, or the first strategic step or actionable step that I had to go through to overcome my depression. I could not remain in denial. I could not remain upset that, oh, why is this happening to me? Because I went through all those emotions. Again, I went through the 5 stages of grief. I went through all 5 of them. I went through the denial, the anger, the bargaining, got more depressed before I got to the acceptance. So I had to go through all 5 of those stages. But ultimately, like I said, I made the decision to not take my meds, because again, I was believing on my faith base. And I said, well, God, I can't be slave to the bottle. I refuse to be slave to a bottle, because if I have to be slave to a bottle, then why do I need to serve you if you can't do it? Why am I serving you if you can't do it? But little did I know that when you step out on faith, things usually get worse before they get better. Well, that is it for today's video. Part 2 will be uploaded on next week. If you have questions or need clarity on anything that I mentioned in today's video, or if I skipped anything, please put your questions in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer any questions that you may have, and I will see you in the next one.